Good morning. We're reading Frendel, and I'm actually finishing up chapter 12 and going into chapter 13. So that was good news to Tom Allen. He was sick and tired of all the fuss and being away from the hardware store so much while all this nonsense was happening. But it put him weeks behind on his paperwork. He'd be lucky now to get his Christmas order in time, even though he didn't really want anything to do with it. Bud was an old friend, so on the way back to the store, Nick's dad went to Bud Lawrence's office. "Tom, good to see you," said Bud. He stood up and walked around his desk to shake hands. "Have a seat." Tom sat down uneasily, and Bud pulled another chair over. "Ever seen Weisful so stirred up about anything in your life? You and Jenny must be pretty proud of that boy of yours." Bud couldn't remember Nick's name. Tom shifted in his chair and nodded. "Yes, he's quite something, that's for sure. But I tell you, Bud, I'm ready for it all to just die down and blow away. Too much fuss." Instantly, Bud saw how to get what he wanted. "Well, Tom, I'm afraid it's not really going to go away. Looks like something started up and people are real interested. You probably saw those bright red ballpoints around town with the word Frendel on them. That was my doing, just testing the waters. But your boy, he owns that word. I got my lawyers to apply for a trademark a few weeks back because that's just the way I am. New thing comes along, I like to be right there in the middle of it." He grinned at Tom Allen, and Tom smiled back weakly. "Right now, I got a shirt printer in Massachusetts and another one in Chicago and another one in Los Angeles making t-shirts with the word Frendel above a picture of a pen. I mean, a Frendel. Each supplier has orders so far for over 20,000 shirts. Profits on every one of those is going to be $2, maybe $3. And I'm talking with some big pen and pencil companies in Hong Kong and Japan about a deal that could be worth some really big money. They've seen this Frendel thing in the media and they want to buy the rights to the trademark and make a new line of Frendels for kids. I'm not kidding. This is a hot, hot idea." Bud guessed right. Just the thought of all this made Tom shrink back uncomfortably in his chair. It was way too much fuss. "Tom, let me be direct with you. As the boy's guardian, you need to do the right thing about all this. I'd like to see where all this is going to go. I'm going to take some risks, spend some money, see what happens. But I need your permission. I need your signature on these trademark papers, and I need to strike a deal with you about permission to use that trademark. I know it seems like a big ruckus about a word, but we just can't tell what's to come of it unless we take some steps." Bud pointed at the papers on his desk. "That's a contract, and it's fair and honest. It gives your boy 30% of whatever profits I might make. That's a fair royalty, generous for this kind of deal. So what do you say? Make sense? Let me take care of all the fuss and see if some good doesn't maybe come of it all." The papers and a pen were there on the desk next to Tom. He looked at Bud, then reached over, picked up the pen, and signed both copies of the trademark papers and 3 copies of the contract. "I've got no reason to doubt you one bit, Bud, and I sure don't want to mess with any of this myself. Is that it?" he asked, standing up. "Not quite, Tom. Here." Then Bud Lawrence handed Nick's dad a check for $2,250. "What's this for?" "That's what I owe Nick for the sales of Frendels from the first 3 weeks," explained Bud with a smile. Tom looked at the check and said, "This is terrific, Bud, and I'm really glad about it because it'll sure help with Nick's college. But I wish you'd just keep this between us. If Nick knew, he'd probably stop mowing lawns, and I'd never get him to save another penny. So just between us, okay?" Bud said, "Sure, Tom, I understand. Just between us." And they shook on it. Mr. Allen left Bud's office and walked across the street to the savings bank. He set up a trust account for Nick, and the bank manager said he could make arrangements with Mr. Lawrence, so any other money could be deposited automatically. That sounded good to Tom Allen. If he had never heard another word about it, that would be fine. As Nick's dad walked slowly back to the hardware store, he wondered if things were ever going to be the same again in his quiet little town. Chapter 13 is called Ripples. But life did settle back to normal in Weissville. More leaves fell, Thanksgiving came, then the first snow, then Christmas and more snow. Fall and winter seemed to calm everything down and drive everyone into their own houses. Things were calmer at Lincoln Elementary School, too. Frendel mania was over, but that didn't mean the word was gone, not at all. All the kids and even some of the teachers used the new word. At first it was on purpose, and it became a habit, and by the middle of February, Frendel was just a word, like door or tree or hat. People in Weissville barely noticed it anymore. But in the rest of the country, things were hopping. Frendel was on the move. In hundreds of little towns and big cities from coast to coast, kids were using the new word, and parents and teachers were trying to stop it. What had happened in Weissville happened over and over and over again. Bud Lawrence couldn't have been happier. There were Frendel shirts and sunglasses and erasers and notebooks and paper and dozens of other items. The new line of Friendles imported from Japan were a big hit, and now there was talk of selling them in Japan and Europe as well. The checks that went into Nick's trust fund got bigger and bigger. Bud opened his own factory in Weisfield to make Friendle baseball caps, which created jobs for 22 people. And in March, the town council voted to put up a little sign on the post below the town's name along Route 302. It said, "Home of the original Friendle." And Mrs. Granger, she seemed to have given up, or perhaps she had been ordered to. No one knew. Her poster about the forbidden word had quietly disappeared from the bulletin board, and kids were not staying after school writing sentences anymore. It was business as usual, except for one thing. So there's the sign. Welcome to Weisfield, the home of the Friendle. Everyone in 5th grade got at least one word wrong on his or her spelling tests each week. Every week, the first word at the top of Mrs. Granger's list was pen, and every Friday during the spelling test, every kid spelled it Frindle. Nick was sort of a celebrity for a while. Everyone had seen him on The Late Show and on Good Morning America and 2 or 3 other TV shows. John and Chris and all his friends kept asking about what it was like to ride in a limousine. After a week or two, though, it was old news, and everyone seemed to forget it and move on. The only person who couldn't quite forget about everything was Nick. And chapter 14 is called Inside Nick, which we will learn more about tomorrow. Thanks for listening.